That Good evening and welcome to Friday Night with Friends at Newark UPC. We work hard all week and then on a Friday night we sit down with a friend and just chat. I don't have a cup of coffee, but it's that kind of a chat. So tonight I have my friend with us, Dr. Lois Truman, and I'm going to read her very impressive bio here real quick so y'all can know a little bit about how amazing she is, and then we're going to talk about her life. So Lois Truman began her career as an elementary school teacher. She earned her Master's of Education prior to becoming a school guidance counselor and later worked as a guidance counselor for the Army Education Center. While her husband was active duty as an Army chaplain, Lois was director of several Army Child Development Centers. She was on the team that created the training modules for Child Development Associate credentialing. Lois continues to teach college-level early childhood courses, as she has done for over 15 years. Her PhD is in Child and Family Studies from Syracuse University, New York, with a specialty in infant and toddler development. In addition to teaching for Ivy Tech Community College of Indiana, she is Children's Ministry Director for University City Family Church in Missouri, and is director of New Destiny Child Care Center in Maplewood, Missouri. She volunteers in her grandchildren's schools and tutors refugees and immigrants learning English to pass the U.S. citizenship exam. So I'll ask you first of all, what do you do in your free time? It sounds like you're very, very busy.
Well, yesterday I just painted the kitchen. So
there you go. You do have some free time. Yeah. All right. Now I can tell you're a person that doesn't like to sit and just eat bonbons.
No, I carry knitting with me, so I'm always,
knitting is good. Yes. Yes. So what I want to do is start at the beginning. As a history teacher I heard said one time, the best way to tell a story is to start at the beginning. So tell us a little bit about your first few years, where you were born, what was the context. Just share with us.
Okay. Well,
what you told me in that document, but just tell that to the group here.
My father was a minister, and when he married my mom, they went to Richmond, Indiana, where there was a very small group of people that needed a church there because of the rationing during the war of gasoline and tires. So my grandfather had asked him to come there and start, create this church for this group of people that had been traveling to my grandfather's church. So that was in 1944. I had a brother that was born in 1945, but he ended up being born in St. Louis, again, because of the doctor situation. My mom went back to her home in St. Louis, Missouri, and had him. And then the following year, I was born, and my mom did the same thing. So consequently, I was born in St. Louis, although when I was 13 days old, I went back to Richmond, Indiana, and lived there through the 5th grade. And when my father got a special calling, he had a dream about a man in a turban and a robe, asking him to come help them. And he didn't know where this country was or anything about it. So upon looking further, they discovered that it was in Libya, like the man that the clothing, that he had was from Tripoli, Libya. So we started preparing to go as missionaries. My 2 brothers, I then did have a 3rd brother that ended up being born in Richmond. So we all went to prepare to go to North Africa.
And how old were you?
At that time, I was in 5th grade.
How did you feel about that? What did you think of that?
Oh, I loved it. I just think everything that happens in life is just a wonderful adventure. And
I love that outlook.
I just felt very special. In fact, my whole life, I've had so many different experiences. When we we ended up not going to Libya through a bunch of things that didn't work out.
We can talk about some of those, but
okay. Yeah. We ended up in Jerusalem, actually. So my parents resigned the church after like 13 years being there. They resigned, and we went to live with, we spent a year in Indianapolis because there was no missions planned. I mean, you had to raise your own money and figure out your own budget, and there was no systematic way.
So this was before the days of PIMs and travel deputation schedules and all. I know our missionaries today are very frustrated and hate deputation, but it's much better than it used to be.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, I wasn't planning to tell this, but I just feel like saying this. My dad and grandfather took a trip over first ahead to scout out the area.
Right.
So my mom traveled on the weekends with my two brothers and myself, and we still went to churches to raise funds. So we had our system down, and my brother showed the slides in absence of my dad and all this. And we got up there and did our little song and did everything. Bob was 6th grade, I was 5th grade, and Ed was 3rd grade. So when we did that, and we kept saying to my mom on the way there, we kept saying, oh, we want to eat. We're so hungry. You know, this is a true missionary story. And Mom said, they'll give us an offering and we'll be able to buy a hamburger or something. I don't know what. So, excuse me. So we started on the way at this service. Everything was going great. They had us, the pastor had us stand up and hold the offering.
Oh, no.
And we could see there was a lot of money going in the offering plates, and we're thinking, oh, this is wonderful. Bob and I did.
We're going to have hamburgers tonight.
Yeah. At the end of the service, we got not 1 cent from that church.
Oh, no.
I don't tell that story very often. I just feel like saying that for some reason to show that in spite of all of that, God made a way. We were able to go overseas. We were able to do the work that God called us to do. And I never heard a negative word from my parents in any way, shape, or form about that situation.
Yeah.
So, and in fact, years later, the lady that was the treasurer told my mom, said, that was the biggest offering we had ever received from missionaries. And my mom told her then, she said, well, Sister B, we didn't get 1 penny of that. She was horrified.
Keeping a good attitude is just as important as all the rest.
It is. And if you really believe that God is guiding you and calling you and leading you, then that's it.
Yeah.
End of story.
That's true. That is true. That's true. So your dad and granddad, was your granddad a minister?
Yes, both of my grandfathers were ministers. All of my uncles on both sides of my family, and my aunts married ministers. I mean,
so it was thick in the McFarland clan.
Yes.
So that your granddad and your dad went over to Libya. Now, did they speak? I guess it's Arabic, right?
Yes. No, they did not. But we had an Air Force base, a Wheelus Air Force base was stationed in Tripoli. So we had connected with a family that had been out of my grandpa Gwen's church. My mother,
your mom's dad,
name was Gwen, and Grandpa Gwen is actually, it was his church that hosted the conference of the merger. And that's a whole nother story.
Wow.
UPC. Because my grandmother housed like the Witherspoons, and I mean, I don't know who all stayed in their home during time, and I could write a book just on that alone.
I do request that you write a book, because it may be a several volume set. I think we have several books in here. It all needs to be written down for all of us, but for your kids and grandkids. Anyway, that's a different topic. So your dad and granddad are in Libya, and then you and your mom and brothers went to be with him?
No.
Okay.
They had to suddenly leave the country because there was a scam going on where a lot of Western countries were going over, sending people over for businesses to develop North Africa, and they would leave a stamp off of the required passport or visa, and so these people didn't know it. At the end, then they would get held for ransom and say you were illegally in this country, and then contact whatever company had sent them over to pay. Yes, it was all about. And miraculously, somebody pointed this out to my dad while they were there, and he looked and he said, "No, I don't have that stamp." And so that's when my grandpa said, I'm going to go down and get us tickets out of here, because we're going to get nailed if we don't get out of here. So,
the UPC doesn't have that much money to bail you out.
No, we were not the rich oil companies or anything else. So but my dad would not leave there until he talked to the man that was in charge of that. And my grandpa was like, "Come on, Bob, let's just get out of here. It's okay. You can write him a letter." Dad said, "Nope, I'm going to look him face to face and tell him what the deal is." And he did wait the whole day. They did not let him see the man until finally it was closing. Nobody else was in the office. The man had to come out of his office.
I'm trapped.
Yeah. So Dad said, "Sir, I just want to tell you that I am not like other people that have come over here to this country. God has called me to come here and told me to come here and help your people." And he said, "So I'm going to see you on the judgment day, one of these days." He said, "I will see you." And he said, "You will answer to God for why you blocked his plan for us to come here to your country." And he said, he just slammed his fist down on his desk and said, "I will tell God why," and just was very belligerent. So anyway, Dad said, "All right, sir," and reached out to shake his hand. And then Grandpa by that time had showed up, and he said, "All right, I've got us 2 tickets out of here." And they flew out that night and landed in Cyprus on their way on over to Jerusalem, where they spent the night.
Okay.
And while they were in Jerusalem, they looked out, and it was during the prayer time.
Mm-hmm.
All of the men were lined up in rows on the streets for prayer. And Grandpa said to my dad, he said, "Look, aren't they dressed very similar to what you saw that man dressed?" And Dad said, "Well, yes." And so that's how we ended up. Then the Lord opened the door in Jerusalem, even to the point that we had a private audience with the late King Hussein in his palace.
Wow.
He told my dad, he said, "I wish your church had 50 more men to send just like you." And it was a wide open door for a narrow window of time. And at that time, I went to the Friends Girls School. My experience of going to a private school, I'd always been in public school till then. But I remember walking in that first day into the Friends Girls School, and they all had on uniforms.
This was in Jerusalem.
In Jerusalem.
When you got to Jerusalem.
Yes, and they're all speaking Arabic and just feeling my clothes and raising my skirt, looking up under. I mean, I can tell you.
You were how old? How old were you?
I just stood there and thought, well, this is why I'm here. And I just smiled, and I was trying to communicate, but they did speak some English. So that was my experience after being in the country 1 week and starting school in this completely foreign situation.
So how old were you?
I was 12. I was 12
okay.
at that time.
And your mom and your two brothers, were your brothers in the same school? Oh, was it an all-girls school, you said?
Yeah, my brother went to the Friends Boys School, which was down the road.
And were the classes in such in Arabic, or?
They were supposed to be in English, but all the teachers were, not all the teachers, most of the teachers were Arabic speaking. So of course, whenever a student would ask a question, 9 times out of 10, they would ask it in Arabic. And then without thinking, the teacher would respond in Arabic. So I had to learn Arabic very quickly to survive.
So how did you learn Arabic?
I had Arabic lessons in the school. I learned it just from my friends. I would say to them, my hair was super fine. They had very thick, dark hair, and mine was super fine. And they said that I had the tail of a mouse. And so I learned that in Arabic.
I love it. Our friend's wonderful.
Yes.
Tail of a mouse. So, so you're 12. How long were you? I assume you didn't have to come back to go on deputation because there was no deputation, right?
There was no such thing as deputation. In fact, we had just, excuse me, we had a lady friend, Sister Margaret Hogg, who is now deceased, from Canada. And she had gone over there several years just working, but in that country and in that culture, she was extremely limited with what she could do by being a female and single. She had never married, and she adopted a young Arab boy whose name is Danny Hogg, who lives in Canada, and just a wonderful guy, and has a beautiful family now in Canada. But she couldn't baptize or do anything, but she was just kind of holding Bible studies and just getting to know the people and just kind of just doing whatever she could. So when we arrived, she lived in Bethlehem. So we would travel to Bethlehem for Sunday service. And that's the other thing. Because it was a Muslim country, they had Friday off.
Yeah.
So we went to school Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday off, school Saturday, Sunday off, Monday, Tuesday, and that will mess up a weekend for sure. So when we would travel there, Dad started holding studies with the young men, and oh my word, this one group south of Bethlehem, the young men, they wanted him to go visit this other group of guys, and they would all put their arms on each other's shoulders around and then start chanting in Arabic to Satan. And they had a wicker basket in the middle of this circle with a stick tied to it. And they would chant and then get into some kind of a frenzy, and somebody would ask a question, and this stick literally wrote in the ground, in the sand, in the loose. I mean, it was pure satanic power.
Wow.
And I will tell you that my dad was able to baptize some of them, and the Lord really broke into that area with
amazing.
Yes, it was very amazing indeed. But my dad was up speaking one Sunday, and all of a sudden he just stopped with just a shocked look on his face, and he just stared back. So we kind of then turned around to see what he was looking at. And here the grandpa, the Abueta family, the grandpa had come in through the door, like over half the service was already over. And he opened the door and came in. And my dad told us afterwards, he said, "That is the man I saw in my vision."
Oh,
it was just amazing. I mean, we have pictures with him and his sons and everybody, but my dad baptized several of that family, and we have stayed friends and connected. In fact, the one would be his grandson, just passed away, I think 2 weeks ago, Michelle Abueta. So how many ever years later,
yeah. And in Jerusalem or in Israel.
In Bethlehem and Bethor, yes.
So God, even though sometimes the path he takes us is not a straight line.
Definitely not.
But he always gets you to your destination if you take this step and then that step. Yeah. So
I did want to throw this one thing in if I could.
Yeah.
Before we got to Jerusalem, when they had a requirement that my parents had to go over for 3 months before my two brothers and I could go over. So we came to Missouri, where my grandparents lived in, they lived in St. Louis, but they had a country home in Troy, Missouri. So we went to school there and stayed with them for the end of that school year for the 3 months. Then my grandmother, who was born and raised in Kentucky, had never been out of the U.S., but she was a licensed UPC minister, very active, very creative person. She brought my two brothers and me over to Jerusalem, and we had to spend the night in Cairo, Egypt. And that was something. And she said, "Now, children, you may never be here again. We have got to go see the pyramids and what there is," while we were in Cairo. So she hired a taxi and took us out there to the pyramids. We rode camels. We did the whole.
This was in the night?
What?
This was at night?
It was getting dark by that time. And then we came back to this hotel that was called the Windsor Palace Hotel. It was like something out of a movie. It had the wooden things on the elevators and the whole, it was like old. It was very, and then the next morning, our taxi driver slept outside the hotel to take us to the airport early, and it was still dark. And when we were coming out of the hotel, I stepped on a man who was lying and sleeping across the doorway. And I remember just screaming. I was just like, oh, it was dark and all this strange sounds. And I would think in my whole life, that's probably the one and only time I felt completely foreign. Like I was in a strange place. It didn't last very long, and I never repeated it. But that I remember all the sounds and smells, and there was nothing the same.
Right.
And so,
two things, and then we'll get to question. If we run over a little bit past the 30 minutes, it's fine. No. This is great. This is exactly on the spot. There's so much fear in our world today of the Islamic world, the Muslim context, all of those things. Talk to me a little bit about how it felt to be a 12-year-old girl, pulled out of your comfort zone, put in this other culture, and then how that's affected your life. And it wasn't in your story, and we might go into it, we might not. I'll just tell the audience that you spent how many years in Dubai, even recently?
2 years. 2012.
She recently was was in Dubai for 2 years working as in a school there.
Yes.
So you've been back. Obviously, you don't feel too out of, you've been back. You enjoyed that time. So talk to me a little bit about just some thoughts.
Well, I do think that every experience we have is like putting a tool in our toolkit. I don't think anything
Like
that
that.
happens to us, good, bad, or indifferent, is lost or wasted. So everything that I have ever experienced is part of who I am and who I'm supposed to be. And everybody that's listening can say that.
Yeah.
So the thing that really gave me the advantage going to Dubai was my complete understanding of the culture and the and Arabic, and I mean all the things that you don't normally have coming from America. And it also allowed me, because I was familiar with the Quran, because my friends at school, I mean, I loved them dearly.
Oh, yes.
There was no problem of, and I mean, I remember running up and down the old city of Jerusalem at night with my girlfriend, and, just no fear whatsoever. And Gary and I have made several trips back over there and stayed.
You're 12 and she's your friend. So
yeah. And it's
awesome.
I have never gotten hung up on what the things that people believe or don't believe as defining who they are.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, because I mean, that is not the function of a belief system. It's to make us be a better person. And I remember being in Dubai, and I respected the fact that I was in a conservative Islamic university. I wore the abaya, the hair covered, everything, robe, everything. And I respected all of that. And I would personally pray every morning. It was like my prayer walk, going from our 32nd floor apartment.
That was so cool. That was so cool.
Yeah. To walking to the metro station, and then all the way, and just praying every day for God to help me to be prepared, to know what I should do, and to be ready. And there were doors that and they about me believing in the reason they didn't like Christianity or couldn't do that is because they only believe one God. And I said, well, guess what? And so I was able to explain, and they said, no, you don't.
You don't.
I said, no, I am telling you, I can show you right in the Bible where it says and so that opened up, because I was answering their questions. They posed the question, I just gave the answer. And I was respectful the whole time. And I will say we still have some of those discussions going on to this very day.
Well, that's awesome. My husband always says that a witness is a person who's called on the stand and asks questions, and you simply answer the question. You don't set the agenda. You don't, make the rules. You just simply ask the questions, and I like that. Yes. Okay. Last thing, and then we'll go to some questions. I see we have some popping up already, and that's wonderful. If you have a question, go ahead and put it in. Tell me the story about leaving Jerusalem, because for some reason you had to leave Jerusalem. Tell me that story.
Oh, well, the tensions were heating up between Palestine and the nation of Israel that had been established in 1948. And we would be coming home from Bethlehem at night and have to go, we drove by no man's land. very close to no man's land. And many times in the pitch dark of the night, there would suddenly be a light shine on us, flagging our car to stop. We would have to be searched by soldiers, by, question, what are you doing out here at this time of night? And I mean, that happened more than once, and show our passports. So, and when we went to school every day, we went to school in Ramallah, which is now the PLO headquarters. And we've been back and visited there and everything with no problem. I mean, we'd be the only Americans on the bus. Gary and I get on the Navy buses and ride them everywhere. And
doesn't bother you, does it?
So, I mean, you just need to be conscious. You need to be yourself. You don't need to be something you're not. And just love people and follow what the Lord tells you to do.
Right.
I know there are times, my brother Bob and Beth were missionaries in Israel for 20 some years. And so we've been back and forth and visited and stayed in their home with them. And they would not go out the door without first praying for direction from the Lord, because that was after the war and after a lot of bombings were taking place and everything. And that's a whole nother thing of miracles. But we should do that every day, no matter when we go out the door.
Yes.
We should not do anything without first saying, Lord, am I going right or left today? Am I going?
Yes.
Literally.
Guide my steps.
Yes.
Yes. So there was something you wrote me in your notes ahead of time about a flight that was kind of scary and
I forgot. Yes,
yes. That's fine.
Okay.
There's so many stories we could have a week with friends, but anyway, we'll keep it. Go ahead.
Too many rabbit trails.
No, that's fine. It's awesome. Tell me about that flight, though.
Well, we had to. I got to be careful what all I'm saying right here, but we had just like less than a 2 days notice that we had to evacuate out of the country. And this was all on us. We didn't have anybody watching out for us or anything. So my dad, and by the way, this was a young Muslim guy who my dad and grandpa befriended when they were in Jerusalem back in 1957 to be their guide.
Okay.
And we are still friends to this day, very close friends. And he came and told my dad at 11 o'clock at night that we were going to have to leave because he worked for the CIA in Jordan. And he said, there's a rumor that you are a spy. They had some word that we were somehow connected with Israel or something. I don't know what. So Dad, the next day, ran down to the chartered plane situation. It was Presidential Airlines, and it was a chartered private airlines. And he said, I need seats for 5. He said, we don't have any. And Dad said, please, if you get any, the first time you have 5 seats, please contact me. So then he came madly back home, and then we started through our network to contact people to buy the furniture, buy the silverware, buy everything so that we could have the money for the tickets even. So the Lord sent an American Arabic family had just come over, and they needed all household everything. They came in and just bought everything lock, stock, and barrel. So then this young man, Yahya, said, I will sell your car for you because there's no way we could turn over a car that fast in that amount of time. And he did, and sent the money later. And then we just finally, I remember the frenzy and frantic, everybody trying to do and selling, and people, it was happening so fast. I was really kind of oblivious to it. I didn't have any sense of how serious this was. So finally, Dad just then, as soon as he got the money, the guy came from the travel agent and said, yes, we have 5 seats. So this plane was an old propeller and so they had 3 seats on one side and 2 seats on the other. So they put our family of 5 on the wings. And they said, if we need to evacuate, you will be the first out. And
Yay!
yeah, and we're like, oh, okay. So we I remember looking out the plane window and seeing big rings of rows of oil just streaming down the top of this wings. And I said to Bob, I'm like, look at that. Look at that. Well, I didn't know what it was. I said, look at that black stuff, that's running on the wing. He's like, that looks like oil. Well, anyway, so the plane was completely loaded with all mostly Muslim women and children, all Arabic speaking. We were the only Americans on board. So when we got to, we took off, and then we got to Rome, and we're at some airport none of us had ever seen before. It looked like a closed down airport. There's nothing open, nothing. We were just sitting out on the runway, and they said, we have to get a part, something for the engine. Okay. And they brought us some hard crusted bread and cheese to eat while we all waited. Then we took off from there and went to Belfast, Ireland. And same thing. It was not the airport that we knew. Still, no red flags. We're just going right along. We got in that airport and waited and waited. And finally they said, okay, you can board now. We got back on that plane. And we had not been gone very long from the airport. And one of we changed crews there and picked up a Scandinavian crew. And one of them came up and said to my dad, we think we need to be ready. The pilot is going to fly over the water so that we can evacuate over the water. You know how they tell you, how many times have you heard, your seat is your flotation device and all that? Well,
it got real, huh?
And the issue was, it was an 88 passenger plane, and we had over 100 people, 100 bodies on board that plane. By that time, babies were crying, the air pressure was fluctuating low, and your ears were just, it was terrible. We were out of water. I can't even describe it. And when I think now about if I had been the parent instead of the kid, I think if I was my mom, I would be terrified. But she and Dad both just kept us very calm. And my dad, I remember looking over at him and just seeing him praying. And then when the stewardess came up and told him that, she said, and I'll need you to interpret to tell everybody what is going to happen. Well, my dad said to everybody on board, he said, our plane is in trouble. We are all going to have to pray to the name of Jesus Christ. He said, everybody start calling the name of Jesus Christ because our plane has got to be fixed. And I mean that whole plane, you could hear everybody, Yeshua Mashiach, Yeshua Mashiach, everybody on the whole plane and some were crying. I mean, by that time, everybody knew something was
Right.
bad wrong. And we were praying and praying. And I remember, kind of falling asleep and waking up and then have to pray again. And this happened all across the ocean till we made it to Newfoundland.
Yeah.
And so Flanders, Newfoundland is where we landed. And they had to take some people to the hospital off of the plane. And this is, people have said to me, you guys got back on that plane to go to New York? Yes, we did. I mean, at that time, there were no other options, and we didn't want to stay in Newfoundland. So why
I want to stay in Newfoundland for a little while.
Yeah.
I guess you didn't have money or whatever. So
No, I mean, you're stuck.
Yeah.
You and God, is what it amounts to.
Yeah.
Well, we finally landed in New York, and my grandmother happened to be at a snack place at the airport in New York, and she heard these two guys talking and said, "Can you believe it? That plane made it." And the guy goes, "Oh, no way. No, there is no way." He said, "Yeah, it's landing." And she didn't know. She just thought, it's a plane that they're talking about. When we hit the runway, I mean, there were fire engines, red lights, everything, spraying water, doing everything. They thought it was going to blow up. And they got us off. I remember they opened chutes and everything to get everybody off the plane as quickly as possible. Didn't even stop us through customs, just pushing it, get on in this room. And
it's not funny, but it's funny.
I know. I mean, this is preposterous, really. But 2 weeks later, I will tell you that we were hearing on a Sunday morning, had the news, and a presidential chartered flight coming out of Belfast, Ireland, crashed, and everyone aboard was killed. I have no idea what all of that was about, but I do know who owned the chartered flight and all of that, so I'm not going to get into all that. But it was it's just more of the junk that goes on in our world.
Yeah.
And the devaluing of life of it,
Yeah.
So
but you got home.
Oh, but I need to tell you, right near Richmond, Indiana, there was a family that was saved under my grandpa McFarland, and they went to church in a nearby town. And he woke up in the night, Brother Gary Huddleston. He woke up in the night and told his wife, who was out of my mom and dad's church before they got married, and said, "We need to pray." He said, "Somebody's in an airplane and there's trouble." He would pray and she would pray, and he said he could see like a giant hand just go up under the airplane and carry it. And then they would kind of doze back off to sleep, and then God would wake them up again. And they would pray, and that same thing. He had no idea who was flying, anybody. He didn't know of a soul that was in an airplane. But they faithfully did that. And it was a few weeks later when we actually, somehow the story of our plane, and he said to his wife, that was the same night we were praying for. That was the McFarlands. So
that's amazing.
That is, it's beyond.
That's amazing.
Yes.
That's great. Erica, hello.
I didn't want to cut you off. So
you got such great stories.
I'm sorry.
That's awesome. Okay, what kind of questions have we got?
We have a few questions. So
okay.
Got this one. It says, what is the most amazing place you have visited and why?
I would have to say Dubai probably at this point. That was just amazing to see.
Why is it amazing?
Pure desert, and one side's all these huge tallest building in the world and everything.
How do they? Because I've seen pictures. One of our screensavers is a picture from the air of Dubai. How do they get the? Where's the water come from? Because they have like
they process it.
Well, or something.
Yes, they process it from the water bodies, and they do have some wells. And
okay, I've like, how do they do that?
yeah.
That's amazing. It looks like an amazing place. I've also heard our missionaries from Nigeria. Of course, we always go through London. It's just American. That's how they do it. But they've flown Emirates, and they've flown to Dubai and then back. And they said, first of all, it's the best airline service anywhere. And then, I guess to promote tourism or whatever, if you fly Emirates and have a layover in Dubai, they give you a complimentary tour or something. And so they're like, if you ever get a chance, you should do that. And it takes longer, of course, because you have to fly past Nigeria and back. So we never have done it. But yeah, it seems like an amazing place to visit.
It really is. And the people are amazing. Only about less than 20% of the population of Dubai are actually local people. They're expats from all over the world. They're working and doing. And
we have Steve and I have a friend right now that's there running an Apple store, I think. Similar kind of thing. Yeah, interesting.
Okay, so we have another question. Can you tell us some of your experiences in teaching in Dubai, and did you have to wear a hijab?
Yes. It's called an abaya, in some places a burqa, in other places hijab is a head thing. Yes, I did, as to honor their code, their system. As I said, it was conservative Islamic University. I had some students that were completely veiled and some half veiled.
Were your students all women?
Yes.
Did you? Okay.
I was the only female on staff. So whenever we'd have a staff meeting, I'd have to go over to the male side up to the conference area. And I was the only female instructor there.
I bet that was interesting.
Yes. Some wonderful, wonderful professors that I'm also in touch with still.
Yeah. Interesting.
But what was the first part of that question?
Just some experiences in teaching in Dubai.
Oh, one of the first courses I taught, first of all, I went over with a colleague of mine from this Ivy Tech Community College in Indiana. She had been my former program chair, and she and I went together for the month before I actually started work and created the whole education program. That was the plan, was for us to just, all the syllabi, the textbooks, the order of courses, everything. And so we created all of that. And it was at the end of that month, we were just there for the month of July. They asked me, would I like a job there? And I said, you're asking me if I want to work here? And they said, yes. And I said, yes, absolutely. And they said, well, would you like an interview? And I said, yes. She said, okay, Mr. Abdullah will see you now. And I said, right now? Now? So I jumped up and went in, and he started interviewing me, everything. And so they said, okay, yes, that's good. You can be hired. So
what did you teach?
I came back to this. I taught, I started out with teaching early childhood teachers. That's what we decided to do, was start out with early childhood, then moving to elementary, then middle school, well, secondary school, first and second secondary. So I created a lab early child care center there for the students that could use, and it could be used as a lab place for the
Oh, baby.
yeah, for the students to go in and do practicum. But it was very tricky because I couldn't show any image of any animals or any human faces. Very conservative. And so I had to, and at first, the mullah told me no music. I said, we have to have music. You cannot teach some things in early childhood without music. And I said, it will not be entertainment. It is only education, and it's to learn different things. And I demonstrated how you could rhyme certain things or whatever. So, and I even remembered some of my early from Jordan songs about the cat and different things that I could say to him. So anyway, we got all of that organized and done. And then my first course to actually teach was Psych 101. And in that culture, it is like almost anathema to talk about mental, checking your brain or your mental health or what. It's right. So I started out by having them do the personality test that everybody knows.
Myers-Briggs.
Yeah, Myers-Briggs. And we had to do that. And then I did several others that they would go in on the computer and they're like, oh, this is got my profile. So that was an interesting thing. And I got to do a lot of experiential, hands-on things teaching. It was most enjoyable. We just had a wonderful.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah. But again, I would not have been able to do that if I did not have the formal required education to do that. So I put a plug in for that too, that if God is calling you toward a certain degree to plan and prepare yourself, that's what you need to do. Whoever you are out there, that's what you need to do.
It's not all just experiences.
No, you've got to have a piece of paper.
Piece of paper, yeah.
And all of my stuff, like my degrees, wedding, marriage certificates, birth certificates, had to be what's called attested. It had to go through, they have lawyers that this is all they do. Well, I wasn't going to pay a lawyer to do this. I'm saying, how hard can this be? We did it. And I got a little system down, but you have to send to the original place where you were married or where you were born and get that certain stamp. And then there's a little fee, like in some places it's $6 or somebody else. So I made a whole packet and I put sticky notes on there. After you complete this, please mail this next envelope. And I had them all addressed where the next one went, the next one went. But that was crazy. Huh. But that is something you don't know that you have to do.
Huh. Interesting.
So we have another question that says, have you witnessed or experienced any miracles?
Well, we heard some already, but.
Yes, I had, I was diagnosed with lupus when we came back. When I was 15, 16, somewhere in there, I was diagnosed with descoid lupus, which is like the skin. I had the butterfly rash and all of that. And then I went into systemic lupus. And I had to go on heavy prednisone and some stuff, that hydrochloroquine and everything else. And so that was for years. I would, whenever we decided to have a child, I would go off of this medication and try to get my system cleared out from it before I would try to become pregnant. And, everything worked around this and pray. And there were times that I couldn't even function. And the worst I was when we were assigned to Germany and our kids were still small. I couldn't even stand up. My joints were just, I would just be in the bed, just almost delirious. So, and that's when two different chaplains' wives, Church of Christ, not the miracle believing kind, and a Nazarene, Wesleyan Nazarene lady, chaplain's wife, they came in and prayed for me, and God relieved my situation where I could at least get up and start functioning. And then we were stationed in New York, in Waterloo, New York, and at Seneca Army Base. And I went to the ladies' conference in 1990, I think it was. Brother Lee Stone King was speaking at this ladies' conference of about 1,000 people. And as he was speaking, and I didn't know anybody there. I just knew Sister Robinson, who was the pastor's wife, but she was off flitting around somewhere doing something. And so I'm sitting in this huge sea of ladies by myself. And as he's speaking, he said, someone is needing healing here. Well, in a group that size, you'd think about half of them would be jumping to their feet and flocking. Nobody moved, which I was like, this is really weird because everybody's got some problem. So then he went on. I'm sorry about that. So then he went on speaking. He stopped again, looked right in the section where I was sitting and said, someone in this area needs healing for lupus. So I stood up, walked up to the front. I'm so sorry.
That's fine. Don't worry about it.
And so he prayed for me. Very calmly prayed. Oh, this is awful.
Don't worry about it. We're friends.
Okay.
Chat. You can cough here to chat.
Yeah. And he said, do you want your healing? I said, yes. He said,
yeah.
I'm telling you, you can't waffle on this. You either decide that you're going to accept God's healing because he wants to heal you today. He said, so you either accept that and then you don't keep treating and doing and acting like you said. Well, I knew on prednisone and some other medications, you graduate up to where you are, then you graduate down.
Oh, yeah.
You just not stop this stuff cold turkey. I knew that. And I said, yes, I want that. So then I went back to my seat. There was no big hoopla. I mean, it was very quiet, all of it. And I had a little talk with the Lord, and I said, okay, I know I'm not supposed to stop this cold turkey, but I feel very strongly that I'm done. This is it. You've touched me. The lady that was healed by Jesus, when she touched the hem of his garment, she was instantly healed. And I said, so I'm accepting that. I completely stopped every medication. That was it. I mean, I had the moon face syndrome. I was,
Yeah.
So when I got back home, I told my doctor, he was so mad. He said, I will not have you as a patient. I said, I understand that, sir. I clearly understand what you're saying. But I said, there's no way I could explain to you why I made this decision and why I'm sticking with it. And so I have never had another episode of lupus from that day to right now. So yes, that is a big miracle right there.
Yeah, I guess. That's
Yeah.
pretty massive. Lupus is not something minor. All right. Well, we are at 8:00, And I know there's one more question, but we can hold it off till later. It's from my mom about how you met your husband. So we'll push that and get that story some other time. I'm sure that's a good one. But
Yes, it is.
probably more than 30 seconds. So
Thank you all so much for letting me do this. I love it.
It has been awesome. So let's close out by saying if you would like more information about our church or just want to go nose around, newarkupc.info is the place to go to make a request to get baptized or prayer requests or testimonies. There's old videos on there. You can see all the stuff we put up over the past year online, song playlists, all kinds of wonderful resources. So newarkupc.info is the place to go. And we will see you tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock for our nightly broadcast. Have a good evening.
Thank you.